All right, welcome everybody to our Reckler Learning Studios deep dive. Since it is December and many of the schools that I have teachers and administration viewers, we are finishing our term, right? Some of you might not be finishing your term, but many of you are. So I thought it would be appropriate today to discuss assessment. And we will approach this from obviously a Finnish perspective, because assessment in Finnish education is assessment without pressure, how Finnish teachers measure learning calmly and confidently, right? We have to be able to prove that our students are learning, but how do we do that when it doesn't always involve grades, worksheets, and exams? So what we will explore today is why assessment becomes stressful, understanding the roots of assessment anxiety. We will focus on Finnish philosophy of low pressure assessment, the human approach or humane approach to measuring growth. We will look at the three pillars of Finnish assessment, which are observation, reflection, and conversation. And then we will talk about how to begin this week, your first steps toward calm assessment. So let's take a look for a moment at a new way to see assessment, right? What if assessment didn't create stress for anyone in the classroom, whether it was the teacher or the students? The Finnish approach is calm, reflective, and deeply humane. It recognizes that assessment is fundamental, and that it's just a tool for growth and understanding, never a judgment of worth or ability. When we shift our mindset from evaluation to exploration, everything changes. We're moving from an end point in using grades, worksheets, exams. That's our end point, to more of a growth point, right? Where the evaluations, the assessments, the observations we make are there to help us understand what direction we should go in our growth. So students become curious rather than anxious. Teachers gather meaningful insights instead of stacks of papers to grade. So traditionally, assessment was stressful. It was high stakes pressure. There were single tests carrying a lot of weight, creating anxiety and a narrow focus on performance rather than learning. There was fear of being wrong. So many times students were afraid they were going to get things wrong, and it was stressful for them because they didn't want to make mistakes. There's an overloading of marking, grades, worksheets, exams, quizzes, grades, right? Very little time left for meaningful planning and personal renewal. There's also the fast pacing that happens in a content-driven, grade-driven education. There's no time for reflection, which I've said in several other videos, but I will say it again here. Reflection is the foundation. This is where the students take all those bits of information that they are learning and begin to connect those dots. That's where the ideas, the light bulbs go on, is when we do reflection. So traditionally, there wasn't time for reflection. It was considered a waste of time to reflect. And of course, there's shared anxiety. When assessment causes stress for students, the stress ripples through the entire classroom, the community, and it also is stressful for the teachers. They feel like they are being evaluated as to how well they were teaching. Not a growth moment, but an end point where they either succeed or fail. And that's not what we want in a Finnish education assessment. So from the Finnish educators, we have developed an assessment approach built on fundamentally different assumptions about learning and teaching. So instead of assessment is of learning, right? That end point, what did you learn? Assessment is for learning. So we look at assessment as the point at which we can now move in a direction. It gives us a direction. The goal is to support growth, not to sort or rank students. It is trust-based, not only for the students in agency and autonomy, but also for the teachers. Teachers are trusted professionals who know their students deeply and assess without rigid external measures, right? So the teacher is building into their lessons and their day the opportunities for reflection and learning. It's daily, it's continuous, it's ongoing, and it is low stress, right? The mistakes are not mistakes that are end points. The mistakes are learning points, right? Where we can grow from there. So frequent informal feedback replaces high stakes testing, creating a continuous conversation about learning. And then finally, students as partners. So teachers and students come together in the classroom and create a community where learners actively participate in the assessment process through self-reflection and through peer dialogue. So let's look at our pillars of assessment. Number one, observation is data. The most powerful assessment tool you already possess is your ability to watch and listen to your students as they learn. This is called observation. Observing students as they work, collaborate, and problem solve in real time, right? So giving opportunities, small group activities, peer activity, peer-to-peer activities, right? Where you can walk around the classroom and observe in real time what the students are talking about, doing, and learning. Learning through dialogue, behavior patterns, attempts, and moments of discovery. Take quick focus notes rather than lengthy marking sessions. Notice when students do what students do when they're stuck. This reveals their strategies and their resilience. It also gives you a place to jump in during circle integration time in your classroom, where you can provide tools to help with some of the problems that you're observing in the class that they're struggling with. So observation is assessment. You're gathering rich, authentic evidence of learners as it happens. Pillar number two is reflection as evidence. I talk about this a lot in my videos. There are just 4 suggestions here. There are so many different ways to do reflection. And I want to clarify, reflection is not reviewing or reciting facts, okay? Reflection is the process at which the learning happened. So number 1 could be exit questions. 1 to 2 minutes at the lesson's end. What's one thing you learned today? What's still puzzling you? Simple, powerful, and revealing. We have thinking routines, making thinking visible, right? One of the tools is called Connect, Extend, Challenge. Or we can do the 3-question frame, which helps students articulate their thinking and make learning visible. This Connect, Extend, Challenge is actually in our store. It along with several other tools that will help you to make thinking visible. You can grab that to find out more details about it. We can have weekly self-assessments. So students pause to consider their progress, identify strengths, and set realistic next goals for themselves. Doing this on a weekly basis will help them to see their growth and give them something to move into the next week. And then, of course, reflection journals. These are a little bit easier to do with the older students, but with the younger students, you could do audio recordings. So they could do oral reflection journals where they create a running record of growth, questions, and their evolving understanding over time. The third pillar of assessment is conversation as feedback. So here, taking the time in your class to have one-on-one conversations with your students, as well as allowing the students to have peer-to-peer conversations. Mini conferences with the teacher, just 2 minutes to have the student share their understanding. Strength-based language, so start with what's working and then discuss growth edges. Clear next step guidance. Students need to know exactly what to try next. They can, and I I would encourage you to allow the student to be a part of this. This is not a moment where you're telling the students what to do. They're not coming to you for the answers. They're coming to you for a discussion. And the students need to formulate their own solutions. And then 0 grades required. So conversations are descriptive feedback. It improves learning far more than scores or ABC grades. These conversations build relationships while advancing learning. And a side advantage to building relationships is behavior issues decrease in the classroom. So, what tools can you use tomorrow? Start with these simple proven routines. Each one takes less than 5 minutes, but yields powerful insights into student learning. So the 2-minute exit reflection, like I said, what did I learn today? What's my next step? Collect on sticky notes. You can make a reflection board in your classroom where they can put their reflections on the board and see how they grow and change over time. You can also try think, pair, share. So this would be more of a peer-to-peer type tool where students think individually on their own, then they discuss with a partner, and then they can share it with the class. Listening carefully, you'll hear their reasoning, their misconceptions, and their growing understanding. This will also guide you as the teacher into how to move forward with tomorrow's lesson plans. An observation checklist, right? Create simple checklists for collaboration skills, reasoning strategies, or engagement indicators. So this is something I would encourage you to put on the board. These are goals, right, that the students are going to collaborate with you to create. So what 3 goals would we like to work on this week? What 3 skills do we want to improve this week? And put them on the board. Leave them there, reference them throughout group activities and one-on-one information sharing so that the students are constantly looking to and focusing on those particular skills. And then peer feedback stems. These are very helpful for the younger students, but they also work really well in the older grades. I like how I wonder if you could. These are great sentence starters. For students who are new to these concepts of reflection and feedback, and it will help them to articulate what they are thinking a little bit easier. Some examples of assessment across subjects. So each subject offers unique opportunities for low pressure assessments. This is how Finnish teachers can adapt these principles across the curriculum. This is how you can do it as well. These are just suggestions just to get your mind starting to think in this way, because this is definitely a mindset shift when we think about assessment. So in literacy, students can retell, they can summarize, they can create story maps, they can answer questions about how to explain character motivation, listen for comprehension depth, voice development, and vocabulary growth. In math, we can ask questions like, how do you know your answer makes sense? Students can explain their reasoning step by step out loud. Note which strategies they use and whether they really are grasping the underlying concepts here. And this is how you'll be able to know that, because you'll have this conversation with them, this feedback with them. In science, we can use the predict, the observe, then the reflect cycle, right? That's an easy one in science. Reflection is built into science very easily. Students can articulate cause and effect relationships in science. And it's very simple to start science with inquiry. And building those skills, accuracy in observation, right? We have to have specific details in science. We can't just have general observations. In social studies, we can facilitate perspective-taking discussions, right? Using history to help us form current decisions and observations. Students can justify their opinions respectfully with evidence, right? Observe empathy development alongside reasoning and critical thinking. So we can build in here some of our social emotional learning skills that we want. What does it look like in the early years? So preschool and even kindergarten, first grade even, we could include in this early years. In early childhood classrooms, assessments look different, but the principles of calm observation remain central. We have play-based documentation, so capturing moments through photos, brief notes, or learning stories that reveal development. We have the social emotional side, because at the early ages, that's really a primary focus in the academics. So watching for regulation, for empathy, cooperation, sharing, negotiating at this age, right? Relationship building. And then also tracking the whole child. So noticing where there's curiosity, their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills, how they collaborate, where they're persistent, and joy and discovery, right? Just being curious. So play is the work of childhood, and it makes learning beautifully visible when you know how to look for it. The emotional climate is also a very important part of a Finnish classroom. The way we assess shapes how students see themselves as learners. This is a foundational aspect of social emotional learning. We want students to understand that assessment is not the end point. Assessment is the growth point, right? This is where we take off from here. This is how we know how much we already know. This is all the stuff we still have to learn. So at what point do we make the decision to go in a certain direction, and what interests the student? So calm teaching enables deep thinking when we create an atmosphere and an environment in our classroom that is calm and curious. Students will have opportunities for deeper thinking because the anxiety is decreased, the behavior issues are lower, and so the cognitive capacity increases. This is research. This is founded in research. Mistakes become learning moments, right? Errors are treated as valuable information, not failures. Assessment shapes identity. How we measure learning influences students' self-concept. And safety encourages effort. Students try harder and reach further when they feel secure. So, how do we implement this type of assessment, this more modern 21st century assessment? You don't need to transform your entire assessment system overnight. Just begin with one small sustainable change. For example, you can choose one of the routines we talked about, right? An exit thinking strategy, think, pair, share, simple observation checklist, whichever one feels most natural or where you feel most comfortable and would be able to implement in your classroom. Try this particular routine for at least 5 days. Consistency matters more than perfection. Students who are new to this routine will be unsure, they'll be quiet, they might not have the verbal, oral words to answer these kinds of questions. So practicing it, allowing them to really understand what you want, and modeling for them the kind of reflection that you're looking for. Notice the shift. So expect to see more student engagement, see a calmer classroom climate or environment, and clearer insights into learning. These changes compound over time, right? Once you establish that routine, those light bulbs will really start turning on, and you will begin to see how they are building on one another, scaffolding those lessons into something they really understand. Assessment without pressure isn't just possible, it's more effective, more humane, and more sustainable for everyone. Take your first steps this week as you finish up your term, using this as an opportunity to build a foundation as you reflect and move into the new term, setting a new stage, a new environment for learning in your classroom that everybody will enjoy. Best of luck to you at the end of your term here. I hope you feel comfortable with this new concept. And if not, feel free to jot down in our comments because I love to hear your thoughts and reflections on my videos because I want this to be a global change in education because it not only benefits the teachers with job satisfaction, but it creates a learning environment where students are excited to come back to school. Have a great week.